And we're live. It's Friday. Today we're going to be talking about attitude and some of my ways to work around or deal with attitude during the training process in a board and train or in an in-home. So welcome, thank you. It's Friday and it's a beautiful morning. I'm going to give a second for everybody to join, and today we're going to be talking about attitude, and I'm going to give some tips about how I deal with it and throughout the training process, because I get a lot of phone calls. I talk to a lot of trainers and I talk to a lot of owners, and the thing is people want to train their dogs, and that sounds fun and that sounds great, but then when they start to do it, the dog has an attitude, right? So the whole thing is like, you can go battle of the wills with a dog, and you can go and say, I want you to do this because I said so, and then the dog might give you an attitude. And so some of the tips I'm going to give you today are going to be about how to adjust a dog's attitude while still teaching the commands. And I hope you find it interesting. I think I do things slightly different, so maybe even if you're a veteran, you might be able to learn something on here, because we're going to be tackling it in a way where the dog comes to its own conclusions. I'm going to be teaching you, I think everybody already knows how to correct a dog for non-compliance. So if a dog's giving you attitude, you can just correct the dog and then ask again. That's everybody knows that, right? So if I say, go to place, and the dog's giving me some attitude and I correct the dog, for give me attitude, and then ask it to go to place, then it goes to place. That's not something that's really that hard to figure out. I'm going to show you some of the ways that I do it to make the dog have to think and have to come to their own conclusions that they want to participate in what I'm asking them to do, okay? So the name of the game is keeping a dog in a conversation, engaging a dog in a conversation and saying, I'm trying to communicate with you and I want to hold you accountable to do a back and forth exchange. I'm going to say something and I need you to say something or try something, okay? And so oftentimes when we get a dog that doesn't want to do this, they don't want to learn something new, that's where people will call this attitude or brattiness or stubbornness or whatever you want to call it. And that's where a dog doesn't want to take your direction. They might even be straight up ignoring you. They might be passive about it, but ignoring you, or they might be a little more assertive about it. They might even bark at you if you try to tell them to do something. Some dogs will even do that. This is how it goes. So basically I just teach the dog, in order to not get myself in a situation where I'm asking the dog to do something and they're saying no, and then I'm over here popping it hard on a prong and they're getting tense and I'm doing this and then we're going to have this big shit show. The workaround for that is I teach the dogs recall first. That way I can keep a dog in a conversation, show them the rules of a conversation between a handler and a dog, how it works, and when the e-collar comes in, which I will be describing. Show them how a conversation works, and then just start using those conversations to teach the commands, okay? Let me be a little more clear. Hopefully it's not too confusing. So we have the dogs on the e-collar, right, when they come in. The first thing I'm going to do is teach the dogs recall, and I'm going to do it in session 1, okay? That's the first thing I do. And so the dog learns that when they hear the beep on the collar to turn around and come to me. Now the way that I teach it is I I actually bring the dogs down to the training room, and from the training room there's a door that opens up that lets them outside, and it's fenced in. It's the social yard. So I let the dogs out into the social yard. They don't know me. They've got the tool on. I put the tool on, and they know me a little bit because I brought them in and brought them downstairs and whatever. But I don't know them beyond that. And I let them outside, and they go out into the lawn, and they start sniffing around. And when they end up on the other side of the lawn, then they hear that beep, and they go, what the heck does that mean? And then they feel stim at a mild level, and they say, what the heck does that mean? And then I open the door and I say, Fido, let's go. And Fido comes and runs to me, right? 9 out of 10 times. Sometimes there's some coaxing where you got to get down on your knees and come here, buddy, right? And all that. But they come back to you because you're the only familiar thing in this environment at this point. And they run inside, they either run to me or they run past me. If they run past me, little stim, beep, beep, stim. They turn around. Come here, Fido. Fido comes over towards me, sits at my feet. Good boy. That's his first experience with me. This is important. It's his first experience. And that beep and that stim, as soon as he got to me, all the pressure of having to solve that problem went away because he's where he needs to be. So I'm teaching him, whenever you hear that sound, come to me. Okay? And that's the first experience. I'll let him back out and repeat that, but that'll become easy very fast. You get a handful of reps right there. The dog's now hearing the beep, running right inside, running to me. Doesn't take much for the dog to figure this out, especially if it's a smart dog. Then it's super easy. Once they have that, then I take them upstairs and out the front door, of which there is no fence out there in our big front lawn. And I put them on a long line. And I go to open that front door, and what does the dog do? Bolts out the door because they don't know me, right? They just got here. They're here because of bad behavior. They run out the door. They're not supposed to run out the door. That's a rule, but they don't know that yet because they're not settled down enough to. They're not going to look at me and say, "Hey, what are the rules around here?" So I let them run out. They run out. Beep. Correction. They come back into the house. I get them to recall to me. They sit at my feet. Good boy. Settle down for 10, 20 seconds, whatever. Open the door back up. The dog doesn't go out the door, just looks out the door, and then looks at me. Oftentimes they sit, and then I step out the door. I look at the dog, and I say, break. And the dog goes outside and then past me, because again, it doesn't care about me that much, but every recall rep, it's starting to pay attention to me more. Now it's running past me on this 30-foot long line, so it's not free, but it feels like it's free because it's got this long line on, so it doesn't feel like there's a leash on it. It runs up, starts to go up the driveway, starts to commit to run away from me because he doesn't care about me. He's headed to do his own thing. Beep, stim, the dog gets corrected, comes back to me. Hey, Fido, I'm nothing but sweet when the dog comes to me, okay? It's he's having his own experience with this, and I'm just there to guide him. He gets to my feet. Good boy. Pet him, and I just stand there. And here's the part that I forgot to mention to you. With all these recalls, when the dog gets to me, I don't tell him to sit. I don't grab the leash and hold him there. If he gets to me, and then I pet him, and then he walks away, then I just go, correct, and the dog comes back to me. And I pet him on the head. Good boy. Stand there for 30 seconds to a minute. The dog starts to walk away. Recall, correct. The dog will eventually come to you and stand or sit or lay down because they don't think the option of going away is there anymore. So now they're doing what I want them to do, which is staying. And then I can go over and look, I can take a step back and look at the dog and say, break, and walk away. So the dog knows you can go free when I say break. And this is all without me telling the dog to stay or anything. The only thing I'm doing, like I said in the beginning, is I'm keeping the dog in the conversation with this recall. I'm teaching him that this is always going to get you to me, and very soon, this is not only going to get you to me, this is going to get you to me and start a conversation so we can start learning our commands. Then I say break, and I walk away from this dog, and this dog starts following me. Now he's not going and running away from me. Now he's like, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to keep you in my sight. So now he's decided that I'm relevant enough to stay with me. And we go up on the field and we walk around the perimeter of the property, and I'm petting the dog when we're interacting and he's coming by me, but they go and they sniff and they do their own thing. And most of the time they end up on the edge of the grass and then the cement where the road is. And they hop on over to the road, and as soon as they hit the road, it's correction, and they come back. And we do a recall and they settle down at my feet. You know, pet them on the head. Do the same thing if they go to walk away. It's a recall, but they don't anymore. At this point, they just stay. We settle down for a second and then break, and I let the dog free again. Free to go wherever they want. Now the dog's really paying attention to me though. So if I walk out of sight, the dog's following me. So I'm creating a follower. I've taught, this is all in the same session. We've already got this rolling, which is recall, which we're gonna keep building on. The dog's already starting to see me as relevant, a safe place that he can trust, and someone who's going to be guiding them. So we got the relationship headed. And we've already started working on attitude, because the attitude is simply the dog not paying attention to you. It's simply the dog not listening to what you're saying and trying to do what you're saying. They don't want to hear what you have to say. Now this dog is starting to want to hear what I have to say, even though I'm not saying much to him. He He's willing and ready to take my direction because I know how to walk around here without getting corrected. So if you follow my direction, I will tell you where the rules and the boundaries are. But right now you're not listening, so I'm going to let you go find them out on your own. And while we're at it, we'll be doing recall. So that's pretty much how that works. We get the relationship right, we get the recall right. Of course, I go downstairs and I do my kennel work too on day one, where I'll go introduce the dog now to the kennel room, which is where all the dogs are, and teach them to go into their kennel and then to not come back out until told, right? Just like any stay command. So, average dogs and dogs who have issues with being in a kennel, this protocol works really well for. And I hope you guys are seeing a theme. I'm letting the dog make a lot of choices. This is the point of this, is dogs have attitude, but the best way to get rid of it for me, one of the easiest ways, is to let them explore their options and get the full-on consequences for their actions and watch the attitude subside. And then once the attitude goes away and you get a dog who's looking at you for guidance, then I'll start talking to the dog more and giving it more direction. But I'm not going to beg the dog for them to pay attention to me. We create it organically because they realize they have to. They have no choice. They don't know how to behave properly without our guidance. So the dog has attitude. So now the dog, maybe it wants to come out of the kennel. It doesn't want to be in the kennel. So all the dogs we expect are going to want to be out of the kennel. So the thing that we do is, well, what if the dog decided that it didn't want to be out of the kennel? Then all of our problems would go away. The barking would go away, the whining would go away, the drooling would go away, whatever the dog's issues are would go away if the dog wanted to be in the kennel. So we put the dog in the kennel, I keep the kennel door open, and I tell the dog to stay. Whether they know what stay means or not, that doesn't matter. And then I walk into another room. They all usually know what stay means, but they don't care what you're saying. Then I walk out of the room and keep an eye on them through the crack of the door, but they think I'm gone. And so the dog's like, this is the best style of training because you get the dog gets choices. You're going to make the right choice or the wrong choice. I'm setting them up with ultimatums all the time. Like, the door's open and you were told to stay there. What are you going to do? And so these dogs usually know that they were told to stay there all the time because they go this. They look to see where I am. They look to see if I'm gone, right? And then maybe they want to get out. Maybe they'll hesitate. Some of them do. Some of them impress me. I'm like, wow, they're staying. It's been 3 minutes and they haven't gone out yet, but they're whining. Eventually, every one of them, whether it's the second I step out or if it's 3 to 5 minutes later, they go and they put their paw out and they go to get out of the kennel. The e-collar turns on at a mild level, maybe even something they just barely feel. And then it dials up and then it hits a level where they say, oh, I want that to turn off. Most of the time they turn around, they get back into the kennel and I turn it off without me entering the room. Dogs are smart. If they don't figure it out, I enter the room, but I keep this pressure on at a level that the dog wants to turn off, but isn't. You have to look at the reaction of the dog. You don't want the dog freaking out. Just enough for them to be a little uncertain of what to do. And perhaps even a little concerned because this is a new environment. They don't understand what's going on. I come in, I tell them to place, I put them in their kennel. Good boy. Pat him on the head. Again, I'm not angry at the dog. I'm not mad at the dog. I'm not coming in saying, no, none of that. Not right now. That's not what I'm going for. They get in the kennel, it turns off. The sensation turns off, and I say, good boy, and I say, stay, and I walk out of the room, and I leave that door open, right? Some dogs do it twice. Some dogs do it 3 times. Some dogs do it once. They step out, though. And then eventually, with that door open, they look at the door, and they realize there's not an option to get out. And so the stress goes away, and you see a dog relax and feel better because they're no longer stressing about getting out because, one, they don't want to get out anymore because they did that and it doesn't end well, so they prefer to be in the kennel. And 2, because that's not an option, they're not worried about it. So you see a dog healthier in their mind. And it works, and that's the beginning. So they learn to stay in there. Now I'll come in once I see the dogs relax, and sometimes I stand there, guys, 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Some of these dogs need it that long. Some dogs, it's like a 5-minute protocol, and it's over. But it's worth it to me because then the dog sleeps all night without trying to get out of their kennel. And we have dogs come in that try to escape out of kennels, and they don't do it because of this particular exercise. All that's changed is the dog doesn't desire to be out of the kennel, so we don't see any of the bullshit. They'd rather be in the kennel, and that's a good place to start, and I can build on that. Remember, we stack experiences around here, so that's experience 1 out of 3 to 4 weeks of days of training, right? So now the dog wants to be in there. I go in, and I shut the door this time. I say, good boy. I loosen the e-collar. If they have an e-collar on, they usually do. Just so they're comfortable, make sure that I rotate it, and I leave them with a camera on them, and I go upstairs. And I watch them for the next hour or so, and just kind of peek in on them and watch them to see if there's any standing up and poking at the door. That'll get corrected on the e-collar. Mild. The way that I do it is like it's barely touching them, because the thing is, this is another thing that you need to understand about why it works, the low levels at this point for me. They already had firmer levels on this for the and justifiably for trying to run away with the recall and stuff. So they understand that little tingle can get firmer already from day one in a way that made sense to them, that addressed the attitude, that taught the recall. All that's happening at once. So now by the time they feel that little light one, they start to take it seriously, right? And if I need to go downstairs, I'll go downstairs and adjust the dog and relax them and teach them what it means when you feel this, when you're standing up. It means to relax. Of course, day 1, day 2, this is what you're doing. Eventually the dog gets it in that kennel where you can click on this and the dog will just lay down and relax, okay? But because the dog no longer wants to try to fuck with the door, they don't want to get out, they don't want to go do that, we don't get the whining like we used to. Some whining will occur in a few more days when the dog's comfortable again and now maybe wants to come out of his kennel after a week, because now they're having fun, because now the training sessions are more fun. But then by the time we shut it down, the relationship's there, we can go down and say no and correct it, and the dog stops whining but is still confident, because it's like, okay, I won't whine. But it starts to get confident after the first week, because it understands what we're saying of it. It understands that its behavior is why it causes the corrections, and it understands which behaviors is causing the corrections so that it knows how to avoid the corrections. So ultimately the dog's in control of whether or not it gets a correction. That's a confident dog. So about a week in, we'll see a dog get confident. A week and a half, they'll understand the program. And so then we'll hear whining. They'll be over that honeymoon phase. They'll feel comfortable here. And it's much easier to shut that kind of whining down. It goes away a lot quicker because it's not stress whining or anything. It's more just like, I want to play and I had fun, and that goes away pretty easily. The stress goes away because there's no longer an option. The dog doesn't desire to be out of the kennel anymore. They're comfortable in the kennel and they prefer to be in the kennel until let out. Now they learn they can get out of the kennel when I let them out, because we do potty breaks on day 1. A lot of potty breaks. Like, we got to do potty breaks every 2 hours, 3 hours. If there's a puppy in, you got to be doing it. So potty breaks are training. So I go down and let the dog potty, and I open up the kennel door, and if they try to step out right away, we work on that. But they learn really quickly not to step out and wait for me to say break. And when I say break, all of a sudden when you step out, there's no e-collar pressure, and the dog's like, oh, okay, I see how this works. That's a rule. There's a boundary there. And so in the dog's mind, that's what happens. I made the dog believe that. So it's not like I'm doing that all the time, because the dog just believes that's how it rolls now. And then one of the reasons this is really working is because this is a new house, a new environment with a new person it does not know. So it's absorbing this information, trying to figure out how to behave to survive the best in this new situation, right? Because the dogs are adaptable and it's in a new place, so they're open, the brain's open, especially once they realize there's potential danger, which is what the recall did, where they got an e-collar correction. They went, whoa, there's potential danger around here. Now my brain's open and I'm learning everything at a fast rate, right? I'm picking everything up the next few days, and I'm going to remember all this. So all the boundaries I'm laying down, the dogs are picking up quick, because we opened up that part of the brain, because the brain says I'm somewhere new and there's potential danger, so my brain's open. But if we came in here and said this is a fun, fluffy place and we're using food and stuff, the dogs learn what they want to learn and they say fuck you to the rest, So we have to give them real life experiences here. We have to mimic nature by letting them know the world is dangerous. Yes, I simulated the danger that could happen when you decide to run away. You could get hit by a car. You could get into dog fights. You could do all this stuff. But we don't want that to happen. I just want you to know that when you decide to run away, there is a consequence, and you're going to be recalled, so that never has to happen. And that opens up a dog's brain to learn in a whole new way, because that's how dogs operate. If they're in a new environment and they run into a little bit of a sticky situation, the brain's open and they pick it all up, and it does not take 400 reps to teach this stuff anymore because now the brain's open in a different way. I hope that makes sense to you. They really want to figure it out and pay attention. A week down the road, once they figure out how to get through this environment successfully, now I'm confident again, now I feel good. But the thing is now they live how that environment shaped them in the training program. So they're literally doing what they're told all day and doing what we would like. And they're happy with that now because that successfully gets them through their day. And on top of that, they keep having more and more fun because they become more and more off-leash trained. But back to the attitude, the reason why I like this style of training, because you notice that I'm not even choking a dog up on a leash. I think this is great because 3 years ago, I would have been doing all this with a leash, pulling a dog into a kennel, teaching the dog to go into a kennel that way. And there's always like the leash showing the dog what to do. This type of stuff is letting the dog do. I want you to be in the kennel, but you don't want to be in the kennel, so I'm just going to let you leave the kennel. And the e-collar allows me to give an aversive to that without me being involved. So now it's not about me; it's about the rules of the kennel. This is how the kennel works here, and so it's not about me versus the dog. This is just the dog and its own experiences. Well, of course, I am obviously using the e-collar, but a dog can have its own experience and learn this stuff without me having to necessarily be there and fuss with them, and the attitude starts to go away. So now let's say we're a few days in and we're teaching place. I just want to give you an example of how we can use this recall to address the attitude. If I'm in the training room and I'm asking the dog to go to place, and you point to a dog bed, as long as you got a dog's attention, you point to that bed, and you suggest that you want them to go on it, you're going to notice that most every dog understands what you're saying. But you're also going to notice that within that moment, they're going to decide to ignore you, right? And that's what I would identify as attitude. If your human is saying, I need you to try to do what I'm asking you to do right now, even if you don't know what it is, I just need you to try. And then you say, I'm not going to listen to you right now. That's attitude at a mild form, but that's attitude, right? So attitude is the thing that we correct. We're not correcting the dog for not going on place, especially if the dog's in the learning process. We're correcting the dog's attitude. So it's a conversation. This is what you need to understand. I'm not doing a rep by putting a dog on a bed, although that may be what it looks like. I'm saying Fido, and Fido looks at me, and that starts a conversation. And I'm saying now that he knows at this point, 3 days, 4 days into the board and train, they know that means I'm going to be asking you to do something, which means I can hold you accountable for trying to do what I'm asking you to do, right? This produces a dog who tries, which produces a dog who learns really quick because it's not difficult stuff I'm teaching it. But if the dog's not trying, that's attitude. This is what I'll do. So, Fido, place. And Fido's like, no, I don't want to. I might just come in real light on the e-collar, real light. The dog feels that, looks at me, place. And then Fido's like, maybe I'll move a little bit towards the bed, but I don't go all the way on the bed because I don't know exactly what you're saying. Good, because you tried something. Good boy. Pat on the head. Let's try again. Place. They look at me. If they're looking at me and trying, there is no correction. It's just me encouraging. Okay. As soon as they're like, yeah, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Tap, tap, tap. Get your attention back on me. Get on the bed. Right? Now here's where the recall comes into place. Dogs aren't dumb. I don't have them on a leash, like guiding them on the bed right now. I do have a leash on them. I could just put them on the bed, but I'm pretty confident at this point that this dog knows what I'm saying to it, and it's just not listening because I've been reading dogs for long enough now. The dog walks away, and I go, and all of a sudden, because of day one and all the other days, that noise will get a dog tuned in real quick. They recall, and they're like, "What? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am." Because of the association to it, I already got a dog to be able to take that seriously. I say place, the dog gets on the fucking bed. You know what I mean? And then if the dog gets off the bed, I can just go, and as they turn around and come back towards me, I can just point to the bed and they get on the bed. Because this sound represents recall, but it also represents what the caller could do because the dog ran away a few times and got it. So that gives them the memory of what the consequences can be, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, and they get on. So I can keep the dog in the conversation and keep them trying. So and I can also correct attitude if I need to, if it gets to the point where it's like I have to correct the attitude, it's getting in the way. But with that recall, it gets me through place. I can now teach another command, which is place, with that easily. And get this, from the recall, I can also take that recall and turn it into a heel much easier, because I got this recall. So I got half of my training already done by concerning myself with the recall first. You know what I mean? Throw a sit stay in there and then turn that into a down once the sit's done, and you got a dog who has all the commands. But if they give you attitude, the thing is like if you're teaching down or something and you're trying to tell the dog the down, and this happens to me all the time, you'll see the dog when they check out. You'll see them say, I'm not trying right now, and that's where they get corrected. They get corrected when they say, I'm not trying, and you have to be able to read that. And then when they're trying, it's good boy. Even if you don't get it right, it's good boy. I'll guide you. That's fine. I'm not really concerned about you getting this right, because these things are really easy to learn. I'm really concerned about you learning how to talk to me, how to listen to me, that you know it's not an option to just ignore me or to fight back. Okay, so when it comes to attitude, it will get corrected. Or like I'm doing nowadays, it's like I give the dog time to, they're giving me attitude, I give them a correction, and I'll wait a moment. I'm waiting longer. So if I say down, they're like, I'm not listening to you. I'll correct the dog, and then I'll say down again, and I'll just wait. See what they do. And just staring at them most of the time, they end up giving me a little drop, not a full down, but they'll drop a little, and I'll say good. And now they're starting to understand. As long as you're trying, you're good. But as soon as your attitude creeps up, that's where the corrections come in. So what's cool about this is you're teaching the commands, but you're adjusting the attitude at the same time. So they're associated, because the reason why this is awesome and this works is because this is the way the dog's taught the command. So that's the way they feel about the command. You have to remember that. Dogs do associate, they're all about association. So if I teach my commands, and within the teaching sessions, the association is high arousal and lots of fun, then when we go to use it in real life, you think that's going to be reliable? I've worked with dogs in the past that come from very poppy training, very box office, big box store training. And the dogs, when you start to give them commands, they snap into a certain state of mind, just like ours would that we go into the calm state of mind. These dogs will snap into a more elevated state of mind, and they're ready to work, but they're on edge. Like that's their working mentality. So they were taught all the commands like that. So I'll take a dog like that, and I'll say sit, and they'll go wham, right into the sit. And then I'll say down, they'll go wham, right into the down, but really on edge, ready to spring loaded. And I'll say place, and they'll run over to the bed. They know it all. They'll get on the place bed, but the mind, the association to the commands is like, I'm doing this to earn a ball. I'm doing this to earn food. You know what I mean? So you can mess that up if you use that drive when you teach it. So we're teaching it in real life situations, kind of. Like I make it feel like there's a reason to do the down. When I'm teaching a dog down, you know what I mean? A justifiable reason that I would ask the dog to hold still, and that can give me a conversation to get the dog to down. So what you'll see is like place, for example. They're going to use place when people come in the door. So we'll set up a knock on the door. The dog understands that's a transition. That's usually a time that I do all my bad behaviors. I'll knock on the door. The dog will start to do these bad behaviors. And then I'll say, I'll disagree with the bad behavior, whether it's a bark or whine or charge in the door. I'll disagree with that. Settle the energy down in the room, and then tell the dog to place for possibly the first time. Although I probably have, knowing me, I probably have already introduced the dog to the place by just hanging out on it and like sitting by it with the dog, letting it walk over it beforehand, just to make sure the dog wasn't nervous of the bed or anything. I took care of all that. I know the dog knows to get on the bed with a pointed finger. I know I could get it to get on the bed if I had to. I make sure I could get that first. But then I go and knock on the door before I start the lesson. That puts them in the mind of like, people are here. You watch them switch to defensive. You watch them switch to alert. I disagree with that, which helps with the state of mind training and also teaching them what not to do when somebody knocks on the door. And then I correlate it to the place bed. So then I'm asking you to go to the place bed after I've corrected you. And because here's the thing. Remember what I told you earlier. After a dog gets corrected, their brain's open. They learn better. They learn better. And I think it has something to do with like, my possibly dangerous situation, so the brain's open. And so they remember for next time. So because I allow the dog, I knew the dog was going to bark. I I set it up. I'm ahead. I'm a step ahead. So I knock on the door. The dog does its thing. No, correction. I relax the dog. The dog's now like looking at me like, what do I do? I knock on the door again. They want to bark, but they're not going to bark. And in that moment, you see the brain. The brain's like, I'm not supposed to bark. What do I do? You see the brain do that. I set this all up so I could get that moment where the brain says, I don't know what to do. I want to bark. I don't know what to do. And then while the brain's like that, I say, place. And I go and show the dog the place bed. And you do this 2 or 3 times. You go and knock on the door. And if the dog starts to make the mistake, starts to go to bark, or even does bark, like the next day, it'll throw itself on the place bed. Say, no, I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to be, and not that place is the big deal. It's the mind, and this helps us get the dogs to go over there, lay down, and adjust the mind. It helps them adjust their association, and they hold themselves accountable. So you see how we're playing with, as soon as the mind switches to a certain place is when we interrupt and then direct, so that a dog will start to hold itself accountable when it feels itself switching to another state, like alert or something like that. It'll stop itself. Trainers who do this know, and we call it state of mind training. It'll stop itself and then go and do what you told them to do in the past, what they think you would like them to do based off from the past. So yeah, if a dog's have an attitude like that, we'll use the dog's attitude, we'll use the dog's bad behaviors that we already know it's got to not only address them, but to tell them what to do instead during the teaching process of the command. That's what's mind-blowing. If you're not a trainer, maybe it doesn't sound mind-blowing, but the school that I came from, it was like, that was a big no-no. You don't correct a dog unless they know that command. And it's like, first of all, I'll tell you what. Never met a trainer, a balanced trainer who actually follows that. Sorry, but that's true. I haven't seen it. I've heard people say it, but I've also seen those same people who say it not doing it. So, and here's why. Because you have to correct the dog's attitude, and you can correct the dog's attitude, and a dog understands as long as you know what you're looking for. So if I'm asking the dog to do something and it doesn't do it, I'm not going to correct it for not doing it if it doesn't know what I'm asking it. I'm only going to correct it for not trying to participate in the conversation. That makes sense? And that's the secret, and that's why people who do know how to do that get a dog to learn fast, because they start saying no to the attitude, and they start getting the association of the attitude out of those commands. Like Down's not going to have any attitude in it. If it has attitude in it, we're going to go find that attitude in that command and get it out. We don't want that stuff in our commands. We want place to be taken seriously. We want you calm. We want down to be taken seriously. We want you calm. Same with sit. We want your recall to be taken seriously. So we're not going to teach it like it's a game, especially with these dogs that come in who are adults. We're going to make it more mature of a training board and train. However, I'm not against using food and doing this stuff to shape these behaviors, by the way. It's a great way to do it. A way that works, if you want to use food, is that you shape it all up with these games, essentially, to teach the dog the commands. Once the dog knows every command, then you fade off or get rid of the food. And, maybe not right away. You want to start introducing the consequences. You want to start getting them used to a real life consequence for breaking the commands. And you can still use food for when they break and they get corrected, and then you come over and you give them their food. But eventually, once they understand the commands and they understand the consequence and how to remedy that and get back on the command if they make a mistake, then you get rid of the food and you start proofing it like real life and holding the dogs accountable like real life. Like if the dog's on place, you knock on the door, they get off. It's a correction, they get back on the bed. It's good. There's no more food. There's no more. It's done. It served its purpose. The food's purpose wasn't to pay the dog to do the thing. The dog doesn't need to be paid to do these commands. It's already living in your house, right? That's part of its board, right? You were just reinforcing a behavior until the dog understood the cue. So now you understand that place means to go on the bed. I don't need the food anymore. Now what I need, what's more important in real life, is that if I say for you to do it, if you don't do it, you know that there's punishment to hold you accountable, because that's the stuff that works, unfortunately. That's what works. You get on there, like I said, the speeding thing. If you're speeding, you're not going to speed with a cop right behind you. And if you ask somebody why, everybody's going to say because they don't want to get pulled over. They're not going to say because I'm going to get a reward if I drive nice. It's not how the speeding system works. They don't give you rewards for driving the speed limit. They give you corrections for speeding. Why? Because that's what works. Same with your dogs. So you got to get them off from that earning. They have to get off from I'm doing this to earn. You got to get them off from that once they learn it, and get them onto you're doing it because there's corrections if you don't, because your human said so, and get them in the mind where now they're taking it, they're looking at it in a different light, and then you're good. And I did that for years, where I would train them up in a game-like fashion, even teaching them the e-collar, and even like with corrections, teaching them the corrections, but still feeding and paying while they're learning. Once they know it, all that food goes away. The toys go away. All they get is good boy and a pat on the head, because now you're an adult. You know, even if you're a puppy, now you're on your way to adult. So if you don't get a dog off from that, you're always going to have to pay, and then also your dog's going to have an attitude, so it's not going to matter anyway. Okay? So attitude, man. I deal with it. You know, I will correct attitude, but a lot of times nowadays, it's my... I let a dog explore the options to get them out of their head, you know? So when it comes to being outside, it's like, you want to run away? Well, run away then. This is what happens when you run away. No, seriously, run away. And then the dog doesn't want to run away anymore. Or you know, like, you want to get off the place bed? Go ahead, get off the place bed, until the dog doesn't want to get off the place bed when it's told anymore. Same with the kennel. And this gets the dog to change the way they feel. It takes stress away. Now, I went down the road where I didn't do that, guys. I went years without working this way. And the dog would want to get off the place bed, and I would correct him for whatever the symptom is, whining, barking, or whatever. And you know, half the time, more than half the time, I'd say 70, 80% of the time, that was enough. But there are those dogs, it's not enough. Like shepherds and shit. If they think they want to get off, they're going to be thinking about getting off, and they're going to whine. So as soon as they realize they don't want to get off until they're released, it's a game changer, and the dog just relaxes. On top of that, after doing that exercise, if there's residual whining and stuff like that, then you correct that stuff and shut it down, but there's a lot less stress behind it, okay? So state of mind training is not only keeping a dog calm, I think it's also keeping a dog respectful. And so they learn what frame of mind to be in is most successful with a human. And they also understand, like, your default frame of mind needs to be the calm one. It needs to be the one where you're calm and respectful. Not the one where you're crazy and having a good time. That one you can go into in the context of playing, okay? And you can't just start playing without a human's permission. The human has to tell you to start, go ahead and play. The human starts it and stops it. That's an old training rule, right? Old school training. I heard that many in many books that were older. So you know it works, is what I'm saying. You start the play, you stop the play. The reason why that is because if dogs are always able to just switch drives, if they're able to just pick themselves up in the living room and just go into a high aroused state, then they're going to do it because it's fun. We have to make that a rule that you're not allowed to go and get what people would call overexcited or overstimulated, over-aroused. You're not allowed to enter that frame of mind without permission. And if you do, I'll correct you. This is state of mind training. This is regulating energy. This is how you get a dog who's respectful. This is why dogs correct each other, by the way. We've been talking about that recently. Dogs don't like that type of energy, that high arousal energy at an inappropriate time, like laying in the living room. So puppies don't know that, and they want to have fun all the time, so they start doing that in the living room, and the older dog bites them because he's trying to regulate the dog's movements. He's trying to tell them to hold still and relax. You're disturbing the environment, which is what a parent should be doing, right? So the adults can do that for the puppies. No running in the house, none of that shit, unless you're offered. And here, if that's hard for you, if you can't do that, I'll help you out by sending you to place. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm going to go. If there's any questions, let me know. If you guys have any attitude from your dogs. The end product, the end result, of course, with a dog, they're not going to be, they're on the system, so all the commands have already been proofed and everything. So, you know, if I say down to a dog who's already through their training and they don't, I'm not going to go and have this whole elaborate training session over it. I'm just going to correct, and you're going to watch the dog down, because there's no more need for that anymore. The only time they're going to struggle is going back home with the owners, and they want to test the boundaries to see if the owners are going to implement the same punishers. And once they do, they adjust over the next couple of weeks. But once the dog adjusts and adapts, they don't really give you a hard time anymore, which is what makes dogs great. They adapt. They literally change their behavior because it's the most successful for them. Okay, can you talk about the relationship between attitude and reactivity? Wow, that's a good question. That's a good way to put it. Example, lingering whining, distress from major barking and lunging. He's ultimately making good decisions, but still whining around dogs. Yes, I can. And I think this is a wonderful way you put this. Talk about the relationship between attitude and reactivity. So everything's related. So if a dog is, I just want to say before we get into the reactivity, if your dog's not listening to you great, like around the house without any distractions, that's a sign they're not going to listen in the outside world. And that's not directed towards you. This is directed towards everybody. If the dog's whining, around the house because it's bored and things like this, or like looking out the window and always scanning for animals, the walk's not going to go good. This is why trainers don't want your dog walking around your house like it owns it. It wants it to be relaxing or doing what it's told. That's it. It doesn't want it picking itself up and going looking out the door and checking out for dogs and squirrels, because that's the kind of shit that is reactivity, really. The dog hears a dog outside and then gets up and goes over to the window. That's reactivity. That's reactivity. It's just not on the leash. So lingering whining, distress from major barking lunges. So basically this is how it goes. Remember when I was telling you about adjusting the dog's attitude and like how letting the dog explore all the options will take away the stress, which take away the dog's desire to do those options, which will take away the stress, which is the whining and all that. Imagine this. So the core issue, so I want to explain something to you. So the barking and the lunging and the whining, the lingering whining, are all symptoms. Those are symptoms. So if we go after those, we're going after symptoms. The cause of those symptoms is the dog's desire to go, I'm imagining with your dog, there's different reactivity, but I'm going to assume, because your dog wants to go over to these dogs. Your dog wants to go interact with these dogs. And because I want to, and I'm being told not to, I'm whining because I want to. The core problem is that your dog wants to go up on other dogs and possibly even other people. I don't know if your dog does. We call that's a rule breaker. You're not allowed, one of the rules within our pack, with dogs that are with us, you're not allowed to go up to other packs. You can't go up to other packs. First of all, you don't lead this pack, so you wouldn't be the one doing the talking to the other pack. But you are not allowed to just walk down the street and start going up to people or dogs. That's another pack, and you don't do that. And so how do I teach a dog that? Well, this is where you could do. You could teach a dog heel, and then if the dog, and I'm telling you, this isn't what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what I do. Teach the dog heel, and then go outside, and then if the dog starts to bark and lunge or head towards other dogs, you correct it and put the dog in heel. Now the dog will be in heel, but the thing is the dog will be whining in heel. They'll be whining in heel because why? Because we went after symptoms first. We can't go after the symptoms first. We have to go after the root problem. The root problem is the dog wants to go over there. Now imagine this happened. You got to use your imagination because I know this isn't going to happen, but imagine if it did happen. Next, you set the situation up where you're walking and then here comes some dogs. Just to get this response out of your dog, you set it up. It's a friend walking with dogs, but the dog thinks it's the real thing. It's safe, this is a professional setup. The dog starts to react going into, and this is pre-correction, this is pre-teaching heel, this is pre-all that. So the dog hasn't been corrected for barking and lunging yet. It goes, barks and lunge, I'm going to let it. It wants to do it, let it do it. And it's safe because we are professionals and we make sure the distance is right. If the dog's on a long line, I'm not going to let it get to it. If the dog needs to be muzzled, it can be muzzled. Let the dog run up onto those dogs, and he's going to commit too. And as soon as he commits and starts to really head towards those dogs, once he's a few feet away from those dogs, he's going to get a nice e-collar correction and then a beep recall. And I'm just going to stand there and the dog's going to come back to me. And then he's going to come back to me yelping and going, oh, what the hell happened? I'm like, I don't know. What happened? You're the one that went up to that dog. What? You shouldn't be doing that. I let the dog settle down, like time, settle them down. Bring the dogs out of the environment. Let the dogs settle down. And then cue more dogs. Bring some more dogs in the environment. Come on, let's go. If you think like this is how you change dogs, right? You no longer want to do it. Now another pack of dogs comes walking down. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Do what you want to do. You want to go attack them, go attack them. You want to bark and lunge at them? Bark and lunge at them. You want to sit here and do nothing? Do that too. If you do that, I'll give you a pat on the head and tell you that's the right thing, and you won't get corrected. What will happen is this dog really fast, 1 or 2 times, usually 1, Usually one time, guys. Like 9 out of 10 times is one time. That's all it takes to start this process. Set of dogs comes down, walks by. The dog does not want to go up on those dogs anymore. The dog is what we call avoidance. A lot of dog trainers would say put the dog into avoidance first and then you'll get acceptance later. Avoidance is the dog wants to avoid the thing altogether. That's the first step in the process. Now the dog sees the dogs and people, the other packs, and it wants to avoid them. So I see this. I see the dog wants to avoid that pack of people, and I encourage that. Good boy. They want to walk. They actually go on the other side of me and let the people walk by. Good boy. I'm not done yet. Let's bring those dogs back here, and I'm going to have my guy follow me, the guy who's reactive, without a command. Remember, I have a long line on, so I'm controlling whether he can get to them or not. And I'm in control of that person who's walking the dog, so I can control distance really well. The dog thinks it's an organic experience. Now I start walking around these dogs because we have a nice court, and my dog is doing a circle around them too. But what you're noticing is if he starts to get too close, I'll tap him on a low level and he'll back off. And what ends up happening is he gives that pack space, and he sniffs with his nose from like 10 feet away, which is appropriate. And he's following my direction, but he's still curious and sniffing. And then we repeat that. We let those go away, and a new pack member comes in, and he learns how to be free, but never enter personal space. You can't get close to people that you don't know. It'll never be okay. You can never go up to another pack like that, and that's what I'm letting the dog know. And I'll put that on repeat for the next few days to a week until the dog now is avoiding these packs, getting praise and feeling confident about it, knowing how to get the information that he wants through sniffing from a distance, not whining. If there is any whining, I can correct that with a lot more success now. It's not going to be chronic whining, and it'll start to shut down because I've already let him touch the stove, and he knows the stove is hot. He's not worried about it. He already knows. He's already done that. I don't want to do that anymore, because I already did that, and I can build on that and teach them what to do instead. And then we add the heel command into that to teach them when you're on shore, go into heel. And then we bring it off property and walk around real people and real dogs, and he sees it the same as he's seen the setup. And I'm able to keep ingraining to him, we don't go up on strangers. Even when you're not in the command, don't go up on strangers. But I'm only doing that because he believes he doesn't want to. And another thing that we do, with Julie for stranger protocols is we'll have her baby talk them while they're in a command, and they're not allowed to break. But then they notice that if I go up to Julie and I tell the dog to break and then to come over here, they're allowed to go see her now. So it's not like Julie's causing the correction. It's you going up on them without permission is what causes the correction. And dogs can understand this, same as they can understand getting out of the crate prematurely caused that correction earlier. But you waiting until I say, they're starting to learn that everything's what you say. I can't just do it unless you say I can. And that changes a dog's attitude. So there's a lot more to this type of training than the commands. As you can see, we use the commands because they're practical and they're great. But they're our way of showing the dogs how to relate to situations. You know what I mean? How to behave in those situations. So first, we let them make the big boo-boo. So they touch the stove, they realize it's hot, so they no longer want to touch the stove. If we didn't do that, they're always going to want to, and therefore they're always going to whine because they want to. Okay? So that's really the truth. The only way you can stop the whining for sure, let me tell you something though. There is a way around that. There's another way around that. If you're the pack leader in the dog's eyes, and that term gets tossed around a lot, but if your dog actually believes you to be their pack leader, you've done the right steps to get that belief in your dog's head, you can disagree with that dog whining at those dogs and he'll stop. And here's why, because he sees it as a resource. You're saying, no, don't touch that. That's mine. All these people are mine. I don't want you to touch them. I don't want you to touch that tree over there. I don't want you to touch anything until I tell you to go and do it. And I will let the dog know when the time is to go have fun and release and run around and be a dog. But as soon as I recall you, it's right back to follow mode. It's right, because we're going through the world. And you can't be straying away from me, little duckling, and going off into the road and stuff. You're not ready. And that's not what domesticated dogs should be doing anyway. They should be with their owners. And they shouldn't be going up on other families that don't know them. So we teach them this. And it does get rid of a dog's attitude, but it also allows them to have their own experiences as well. So what I do is both with the dogs, they believe I'm their pack leader, so I have that level of influence over them, but I also allow them to have their own experiences too, so that I can dial back the stress. The desire to want to will go away, and we'll see a dog much more healthy because they won't be worrying about doing the thing that they want to do all the time because they no longer really want to do it. Okay? More questions. The dog must deal with frustration. You need to teach him how to deal with it. I love that. Yeah, I agree with that too. And a lot of people try to avoid it. We really need to teach the dogs coping skills, how to deal with stress, how to lean on the handler when they need it, and how to lean on the commands when they need it. And once a dog knows how to use their commands properly, like we'll see dogs after this program, it makes me so happy. I'll see them get stressed or something, or like maybe not even stressed, but maybe there's temptation in front of them, and they know they're not supposed to do the thing they're thinking about, and they'll put themselves in one of their commands, like a down, and they'll just take a deep breath and use that command because they know that's how they can get themselves out of that frame of mind. We don't want you in that frame of mind, okay? And so a dog will hold itself accountable for being in the appropriate state of mind, which is going to be the calm state of mind. Should tell them to watch Kylo's videos. Yeah, seriously. If you guys want to watch Kylo's videos and all the other videos that we do, Kylo's a board and train that's in right now. Facebook and YouTube is where we put a lot of our content of me actually working with the dogs, and Gabby and Julie. So this is just where we've been talking about it. But yeah, attitude's big. So it's one of the things we got to deal with. And some dogs come in with a really big, there's some dogs that just want to fight you. Like really, there's certain dominant dogs or certain dogs with a certain entitlement. They won't listen to you unless they try to fight you first. It's like they have to try to fight you first. And so we're also prepared for that too. And what's interesting is this style of training, like with the recall and stuff, I see a lot less of the fight on the leash that I used to see. Although it'll happen from time to time, dogs used to get more frustrated and come up the leash a lot more in my first few years of training. And I got through that and used that situation as the time to deal with the attitude. But because we're doing more of this, like, letting the dog make a choice, I'm not necessarily directing it with a leash, I'm seeing a lot less of that frustration coming out on the leash. And by the time the dog has the knowledge it needs with the recall, it's enough knowledge that there's not enough, they don't have to worry about the stress of figuring out what that beep means. So by the time I bring them to learn heel, they know beep means to get to me. They know that. So if they ever get stuck, I go beep, and that brings them to me. And so it gets them out of that moment where they might be at the end of the leash, starting to get frustrated, and then go onto the leash, right? Which you don't want. You can just beep, and the dog will recall, and then you can say good, and they'll say, oh my God, I got it right. And then you can start building the confidence. And so, yeah, taking a dog who has bad attitude and actually making them polite and confident is, it's a magical and special thing to do. It's a beautiful process. It's not always a fun process for me or the dog, like it's the dog's having a bad day, but these dogs come with so much shit, some of them they're just going to need to get it off their fucking chest, and they do, and they do the recall, for example. They'll run around, they'll try to do other things. Eventually they make it to you, and you're like, come here, man, it's not that bad. And the dog ends up, the more they start to learn the commands, build the confidence, and start to feel better. But they realize the attitude doesn't get them anywhere, because every time they start heading in that space, that's where the corrections come in. So we got a dog who's polite. All right. Well, this was a good one, guys. I love to talk about that recall stuff because, for me, it's just done so much, and I'm still learning off from it every day. So thanks for joining. Today we talked about attitude and holding the dog accountable to continue a conversation. And they will get frustrated if they don't want to participate, and dealing with that is part of the process. And yes, the dog does it less and less and less, to the point where the dog does know how to deal with frustration, and it does have coping skills, and also is just in a healthier state of mind. So we're not seeing that frustration towards the end of the program. The last week of the program, the dog's like easy to live with. Now we just go out into the world and proof it. Now this dog's ready. This dog can be making a mistake, get corrected, and just do the right thing and calm down. So we don't have to worry. Now they're going to struggle going home a little bit because they want to go test those boundaries. They want to go check them. They have to, okay? But once they do, and they realize the program's the same, the dog will adjust, okay? I hope you guys have a beautiful weekend. Thank you very much. I will see you Monday. Remember in the comments to leave some ideas for future topics. And I haven't forgot about y'all. I'm still thinking about how to get a different kind of content out here on Instagram that's more demonstration-like as well. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm going on vacation. So next week will be the last week of this stuff until vacation. And then we're going on vacation for a week. And when I come back, we'll see. Maybe some ideas will hit me. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you on Monday.